I would like to just chime in. I think it's really important to note that in the last few years, since 2010, the budgets have been defeated repeatedly. It's really important to have people on the Board of Finance who the taxpayers trust and have confidence in. The two people that you have nominated this morning, one of whom has thrown invectives at the Clinton taxpayers repeatedly. The other one's been on the patch saying things like the taxpayers are outrageous and disgusting. This does not create confidence in their decision making, that they're making decisions in the best interest of everybody, including taxpayers. And I would urge you to think very carefully about appointing these two people to the Board of Finance. And I have a couple of pieces of information I think you should have. One is regarding one of these appointees or candidates' background in terms of a recent bankruptcy filing, which I think puts that person in question, and also a collection of that person's comments on the patch. I think both of these pretty much disqualify that candidate, and I think the other one is the conflict of interest. I think you do need to resolve that, aside from the fact that you've been very hostile toward taxpayers in some of her comments. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
I just want to say that the Democratic Town Committee did overwhelmingly support Lori, and they also unanimously supported Leah. And I think that was our right to pick someone that we felt that they were the right candidates, and we hope that would be respected.
Okay. There. Brad, any questions? Chairman of Board of Finance?
Service equals commitment. I think one of the most important things for anybody who gets appointed to the Board of Finance is that they show up. Attendance is half the battle. Being told that about spreading horrible information, even though it might be factual, it's meant to give a mark on Leah's record, and we shouldn't judge her for it. Bankruptcy is something that's available to anybody. It's a law. It allows somebody to start afresh. She made a difficult decision despite probably not wanting to do it, because I don't know anybody who wants to file bankruptcy, and I just think it's unfair if anybody judges her because of it. And Lori, I know she's committed, and I want people who are committed, who are going to attend meetings.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else? Got his Cardinals jacket on today.
Right. I just want to say that I think it's very hard in this town, or probably any town, to find people to step forward to serve on these committees. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And I think if they're going to be vilified at any point, we're not going to have anybody stepping forward.
I'd just like to remind you that it goes both ways. I was totally vilified during my campaign for first selectman, and no one thought that was off the board or under the belt or anything else. My life was examined under a microscope, and I was found wanting, and I was publicly humiliated for an action that took place months and months and months before the campaign. So, let's just keep the board level here. Let's just keep the board level. We are the product of our history.
Unfortunately, it's part of being in the public eye.
We are the product of our history.
You're going to be subject to, and that's, I deal with it every day.
Well, let's just start from now on. Let's
From
just
now
try.
on, how convenient.
Well, no,
Good. All right, heard it all. All right, very good. Thank you. All right, let's move on. Yes. All right, resignation appointments, we're on to it. We've gotten a letter from the Democratic Town Committee recommending Leah Saunders for Board of Finance for a full seat. Lori Santos, Board of Finance for the alternate seat. Both seats will expire this November for the next local election.
All right, I'll move the appointment.
Which one? Both of them?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we should do them individually.
Do an individual, right?
All right, I'll move Leah.
Okay. All right, discussion, I'll leave. She's here, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Okay.
John?
You go first.
All right. Leah, what are the qualities and credentials that you bring to the Board of Finance? First, what are your credentials? What's your background?
My background is, I have a degree, a BS in political science, sociology is my major. I've been involved in town politics, in town budgets.
What was your involvement in the town budgets?
I've been at Board of Selectmen meetings, Board of Finance meetings.
I've seen you at these meetings, I have never seen you raise your hand or contribute a thought to any of these meetings.
Is that required? I
No,
can't
but
just sit and
it's
listen?
customary.
No. Budget and finance meetings and select meetings are the only visitor section.
get
that's
Well, I
not-
don't think just being in
We don't
attendance
take-
at
we
a
don't take
meeting
questions from the crowd during a
qualifies you
meeting.
for that committee. I don't think being in attendance means anything.
I don't know that any of us on the Board of Selectmen, prior to being on this board, came to Board of Selectmen.
I
because they
did.
contributed.
I did. I mean, I've been to 100 baseball games, but I don't consider myself a pitcher. I don't think being at a meeting qualifies you as a candidate for the role. Do you have a financial background?
No, I'm not a CPA, however, I have my own
Well, I
checking
think
account.
there's only one CPA on the Board of Finance, so that's not mandatory.
Okay,
But
well,
most everybody has a strong financial background.
I run my household. I don't know what,
And you did go into bankruptcy.
we did file bankruptcy. We were advised by an attorney that that was what we needed to do when my husband's company tanked because of the economy. So I did what we had, I wasn't working at the time. He was the head of household. So I was kind of the casualty of war. I was not responsible for his business. I did nothing to run his business. I was just tied to the house. And in order to save my house, so my kids could have a place to live, that's what I was advised to do by an attorney.
All
It
right.
had nothing to do with my abilities.
Does anybody else have a question before I ask another one?
Keep going,
All right, so essentially you're saying you do not have a financial background, you do not have a budgetary background, and frankly, I go to a lot of Board of Finance meetings, and I don't recall seeing you there. I have seen you at budget hearings, I've seen you at hearings, I've seen you at planning meetings, I've seen you at every selectmen's meeting, but not seeing you at the finance meetings. So do you have any experience with the history of taxes as they have evolved in Clinton? I mean, do you know what the mill rate was last year versus this year?
I do know some bits of it. I'm going in there knowing that there is a learning curve. I don't know everything I need to do.
Well, the learning curve begins today, because
I
if you're
understand.
voted in today, my guess is you'd be sworn in today and the public hearing is tonight. How well prepared are either one of you to participate in that public hearing tonight? Those Board of Finance members do a lot of homework,
I
a
understand.
lot of homework. They probably put in, each of them, 4 or 5 hours a week preparing themselves for these meetings. Are you prepared to take a seat on that panel tonight?
This was a big decision that I made. It wasn't, I didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm gonna.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Lori? Yes or no?
Yes, of course.
All right. Do you know what Clinton's current mill rate is? Just out of curiosity.
Not at the moment, no, I do not.
And I want you to keep in mind that, oh, Lori, in regards to the library, I don't know if you understand the significance of the library budget. The library this year has requested $740,000. And this is a library that doesn't allow us a seat on the board, vote in their decisions, nothing, $740,000. The fire department, our entire fire department gets $326,000. Our entire social services budget, youth and family, is $241,000. Our entire park and rec budget, which is Shellfish and Harbor Commission and Park and Rec, is $302,000. See why we're so questioning the library? Because that is a hugely significant number in the town budget. You can't just say, oh, I love the library, we have to give them everything they want. Because their portion of the budget is more than any of these two huge public services combined. It is a very significant force in our budget. So we need to know that you could be impartial in regards to the library budget and looking at it. It's not just up, up, up every year. You have to look at what it's comprised of and be objective in its assessment. Do you feel like you could do that. But that was my only question.
You can ask the
Lord,
question.
because
I'd
that
rather
is,
get it over.
it is a very significant number. Do you think it could be objective as far as that goes?
Yeah, I think it's a significant number, but the comparisons between the various departments are really not what
Well,
I
it is,
consider-
because these are departments that the entire town
Can
benefits
you, can you
from.
not interrupt me?
Okay, yeah.
They're very different departments. The department, the fire department, public works, all the different departments in town are very, very different. The library is, provides a public service and has thousands upon thousands of people coming into, not different people, but people that are using the library. And there's a very different component to it. And the main question that you have is whether I can be objective. Of course I can be objective. I do not see being on the library board as being a conflict of interest. I am not a paid employee of the library. I have no financial gain to, potential financial gain by doing one thing or the other. I am happy to speak with the town attorney about that, to see, and get other opinions from people to see what they think. I mean, it seems to me to be a conflict of interest in my mind has to do with financial gain or material gain of some sort.
I just wanted to ask that question. And it is relevant that it's a social service to the town, because the library is a choice. Park and Rec with our Shellfish Commission and our Harbor Commission is not a choice. That's something that the entire town benefits from. The fire department, that is not an option for the people in town. The social services, that's not an option either. These are required services that the town has. The library is an option. The library is not something that a lot of people in town participate in. I know people who've never set foot in the library. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Okay, I have another question. And Dolly, you said in this day and age, no one has a clean slate, right? Well, also, in this day and age, we are the sum of our parts. And anybody who's applying for a job anywhere is told to be very careful what they put on Facebook, what they publish, with their name attached to it. And Leah, frankly, your postings on both Facebook and Patch are revolting. I mean, that's a very strong word, but I mean it. I mean it. You use foul language on Facebook repeatedly.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
First
yeah.
off, we're not even friends on Facebook, so how would you see my page?
Because there are ways.
Oh,
There are
really?
ways. So I'm saying, everything you put out there is public. And your public persona is not a positive, giving, open reflection of what I think Clinton should stand for, okay? Not to even mention what I see here and the names that you have personally called me, plus a very active association of taxpayers in town. This is not an open-minded individual. And you are the sum of your parts. If you were applying for this job and your employer saw these postings, I don't think you'd stand a chance.
Filibustering?
All right, no, well, maybe. Can either way you define capital expenditures for me and what the difference between capital expenditures and an operating number is, figure is?
There's nobody on the Board of Finance that knew that before we went into it.
I don't think
Because that's not part of a typical
Well, if you've been
budget.
attending every meeting and you're well-versed and you're well-informed.
Carol, you are
that-
such a bully.
Stop
I
it.
am,
Stop
I
it.
am, because I do not think that this is a qualified individual. And I want to make that point.
We'll show that.
And I would like to
We'll
make
show
that
that.
point. I have one more point to make. And that is that when we put specific individuals on the Board of Selectmen, they were asked the question, would you vote politically or would you vote in the best interest of the town? And both of them said, We would never vote politically, we would vote in the best interest of the town, and I'm hoping that they keep that in mind when this vote comes up very shortly.
Okay, good. Any other questions for Leah?
I want you to consider this is in
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
best interest of the town.
It's a very, like Brad said, showing up's,
Mhm.
90% of
That's
that.
not true.
But when you get there, I wish, and no offense, I don't care about your personal bankruptcy or anything, I think that's ridiculous. But I wish you had more experience in finance, and, maybe this board, I don't think is, the Board of Finance is one to learn on the job as much as some of the other ones. I hope, if you do get on, I hope you prove me wrong or prove us wrong. It is tough to anybody volunteer. Look at this. It's like, who wants to go through this, I'm solo. It is
Well,
tough.
when you say, would anybody want to go through this, we went
No,
through
I
an
understand
election.
that, and
We went
but-
through an election
Two wrongs don't make a
where
right.
every facet of your
so
life is questioned.
I've been through 4,
If you
5.
But I do
went through
recommend-
an election, do you feel you would be elected?
Yes.
You do?
Well,
Do you?
she can prove that
She
in
can prove that
November.
potentially in November.
No.
But
because
my
that
point
would
is,
put
I
you
do
to risk
recommend that
90%.
you stay off, I never go on those things, I don't know what, you should, because it doesn't benefit anybody commenting back and forth. I don't care if you think you're right or wrong or whatever. It doesn't, it doesn't look good for anybody. I mean, you or the person you're battling with, or group you're battling with. Especially if you're on a board as important as the Board of Finance. I think there's going to be tough things for you, and I hope, if you get on, that you could make a decision that, not just for your party. And I know unfortunately, a lot of people vote for their party. And I think you got to vote for, honestly, what's right. And, you can't just, if the school, say, was potentially going to bankrupt the town, no matter what, don't vote for the school or whatever. You got to vote what you think's right, or vice versa. So I just hope if you do get on, that, you learn quick and really do your homework. And it's not just being on there and showing up. It's, like Carol said, it's hours of, it's more important than this board, really, when it comes down to it. And for qualifications, I would rather, see somebody that's a CPA, but obviously no one's stepping forward. When Valerie and I did, that was that's something that Board of Finance should be, but obviously no one wants to volunteer. It's not even just because of getting ridiculed, it's just no one has the time, or the people that do have the time are usually older and have either retired or have not bringing kids to soccer and stuff like that. So it is nice to see someone younger volunteering, but I just wish you had more qualifications.
All right, anything else? All right, motion and second. All in favor of Leah?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
I'll vote yes. It's a tie.
Good job.
Congratulations. This morning. All right, next, Lori. Motion for Lori. Second on that?
I'll second.
Discussion with Lori. Carrie already got her pretty good. Anybody else have any questions for Lori? Again, it's about the time, it's about the homework. Theoretically, you get voted now, you get sworn in. I hope that both of you actually would get a copy of the budget and try to take a look at it before tonight. That would be helpful. I'm a little surprised, quite frankly, I'm a little pissed that the two of you are up for these positions and have never taken the time in the last 2 or 3 weeks to actually pull the budget out and take a look at what's out there, knowing that this was going on today, but that's another story for another day. But that's my lecture. Okay? So I have a motion and a second. Any comments? All right, all in favor of Lori?
Wait a minute, I do have a comment. Would you be willing to resign from the Board of the Library in order to take this seat?
I can't answer that at this time.
She
No.
said she, okay. That's my question, that's the answer.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So it's 3-1, and I'll vote yes. All right.
My name is Brad Sullivan, I'm Chair of the Board of Finance.
Welcome to the Board of Finance public hearing for the proposed budgets for the town of Clinton for fiscal year 2013-2014. At this point in the process, the Finance Board has the discretion to increase or reduce virtually every aspect of the budget and send it to the annual budget meeting, which at the annual budget meeting we retire a referendum and we have a referendum vote. This year that vote will be on May 8th. Common sense tells us that surpluses are better than deficits, and we can debate the philosophy of appropriating surplus to revenues and the risk it poses. The bottom line is that we have adopted a policy where we are trying to keep an undesignated fund balance or a rainy day fund balance approaching 10% of our total operating budgets. If this budget is adopted by the taxpayers, then that 10% floor will be approximately $4.7 million. The mill rate would most likely be set at 25.67, which is a 0.49 increase over the current year. Only with a shared and proportionate industrial, commercial, and residential tax base will Clinton flourish. As far as how the public hearing will run, we'll start with the educational budget first. If you'd like to be heard, please address your comments to the board. So, with that, who wants to start? It'll be a short night. Mr. Semino.
Vince Semino, 161 East Main. It seems to be the practice that each year the goal is to increase the budget and thereby increase the mill rate. But last year I was here and I proposed an alternate budget that would have resulted in a balanced budget. And the reason given why that wouldn't work was that surplus funds supposedly could not be used to balance the budget. And I disagree completely. We had a surplus of, in recent years, $800,000 and $1.1 million. And I'd like the Board of Finance to explain, please, why those surplus funds can't be used to balance the next year's budget. With regard to this year's budget, I think that the Board of Education budget could be lowered by approximately $500,000 without the Board of Education feeling any negative repercussions. We've seen nothing but budget surpluses in recent years. The most recent number that I've heard for this year's budget surplus for the Board of Education is approximately $860,000. And I recommend that surplus be returned to the town, as it must be, and then those funds be used to balance this upcoming budget. And I think that, as a matter of fact, I believe we could end up with an end result of being able to lower the mill rate, not by a lot, but in today's economy, I think that anything we can do to lower the mill rate would be helpful. I also think that in upcoming years, when we're going to see new revals, property values can only be lower. What's going to happen then is you're going to get decreased revenue from property taxes, and I think we need to start preparing for that, because at that point, mill rate increases might be inevitable if we continue to be unable to attract new business and more corporate tax. So I would recommend a $500,000 decrease in the Board of Ed budget, the $860,000 surplus from last year's budget be used to balance this year's budget, and I'd like to see a balanced budget be the goal every year.
Jack, do you want to comment about a $500,000 reduction to the Board of Ed budget?
Sure. Jack Cross, 6 Martin Drive, Superintendent of Schools. The suggestion for reducing the budget by over $500,000 would impact the state's requirement with regard to minimum budget requirements, which would only allow us to reduce the budget below the previous year's budget by up to $200,000 if in fact that were warranted at this point. $500,000 would put us below the minimum budget requirement and put us in a deficit situation with the State Department of Education.
Thank you, Kurt Carr. I'm at 9 West Street, Common South. I think your facts are not quite right. The minimum budget requirement this year was a little bit over $30 million. The other thing is that you can reduce the budget by $3,000 for every drop in enrollment. So it'd be another $81,000 that you could have reduced the minimum budget requirement. There is nothing in the state minimum budget requirement that would keep you from reducing the budget by what Mr. Semino has suggested. And I really would appreciate you being factual in the future. Thank you.
It's not a debate. Without getting into a pissing match, I'm really tired of having individuals who are willing to steal documents from town functions, give us credible information. Sit down. The reality is this. There is a minimum budget requirement. And the number that I shared with you would be the number, the maximum that would be able to be, the budget would be able to be reduced for this year.
In spite of the defeating town budgets and assurances of tight budgets, Clinton continues to produce large surpluses in both the town and education budgets year after year. These surpluses illustrate that budgets can be scaled down to real need with no degradation of service, staff cuts, or other painful consequences. I have Board of Finance a table that shows these annual budget surpluses going back to fiscal year 2011 for both the town and the Board of Education. The current legal notice of the town of Clinton and education budget reflects estimated expenses for the current year that are clearly inaccurate. Virtually every budget line reflects that the current year's actual spending will not vary from what is budgeted. Yet in a memo that is attached to this from Robert Curry to Jack Cross, obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, request of the public certified salaries line will go, it's $371,000 in surplus this year. It's not reflected on the budgets that you've been given. Likewise, the employee medical expenses project a $490,000 surplus. Neither of these have been reflected in the budget that you've been given. Budget surpluses benefit no one, in spite of what you were suggesting in your opening remarks. Not students, not teachers, not administrators, not public employees, and certainly not taxpayers.
Mr. Carr, are you addressing the town or the Board of Education, which I believe is what
I'm addressing.
Chairman Sullivan asked you to address, the town?
Rule of order, please.
I'm addressing both.
Let him talk, the camera's running.
But they unnecessarily inflate tax rates at a time when Clinton's grand list is in a long-term decline, with the collapse of the $4 million Unilever warehouse will further adversely affect that grand list. As a consequence, Clinton's tax rates have become increasingly uncompetitive with neighboring shoreline communities. The first selectman can repeat the fiction that Clinton continues to have the lowest tax rates on the shoreline, and we will continue that process as many times as he likes, but it's simply not true. No one pays the per capita taxes. Tax burden is dictated by mill rate, and there's no comfort to be derived from depressed property values that are in part a product of these high tax rates and only marginally mitigated. Comparatively high property taxes put Clinton at a competitive disadvantage, driving down property values, discouraging commercial development, and needlessly burdening taxpayers. Even for Clinton citizens who do not pay property taxes directly, the adverse effect on commercial development reduces the local job opportunities that Clinton's comparative drop in payroll between 2005 and 2010 illustrates, and there's a graph here showing that. This is a burden borne by all of Clinton's stakeholders and not just taxpayers. Clinton's education budget commands 70% of the budget, and associated surpluses have grown in spite of a long-term decline in enrollment.
As pointed out in the previous memo to Clinton Public Schools, enrollment projections have not been adjusted in at least 3 years and do not reflect lower than projected kindergarten enrollment for cohorts in subsequent years, or the precipitous drop in birth rates starting in 2010. But even using Clinton Public Schools enrollment trends that they provide, future projections, it is clear that the budget have grown and are intended to grow even as the needs decline. The time has come to bring the education budget in scale with the need. Based on recent surpluses, this budget can be adjusted down, I would say $600,000, not $500,000, with no adverse effect on students, teachers, administration, or education. You were told last year and the 2 years prior that if education budget is not rubber stamped, students and education would suffer. Clearly that was not true then, and it is not true now. Had the education budgets for fiscal year 2011 and 2012 passed on the first ballot, budget surpluses would have been $1.2 million, or 4% each year. The current state, now I'll get to the state minimum budget requirement for Clinton, is $30.1 million. The declining enrollment will reduce the amount by $81,000 in 2014, a reduction of $600,000 from the current year's education budget of $31.3 million to $30.7 million. It's an error on that, to $30.7 million, is well above the state's threshold requirement. Without the benefit of current surplus projections for the town, it is premature to make a firm proposal. But based on the size of previous recent years' surpluses, a minimum $400,000 budget decrease appears to be possible with no necessary impact on staffing, service levels, or programs. From 1995 to 2010, Clinton budgets passed on the first ballot, according to a report in the New Haven Register on May 26. That is as it should be. The Clinton Taxpayers Association does not frivolously or irresponsibly call for budget cuts or for defeated budgets. Last year, the CTA mistakenly supported the school budget as information about the surplus was suppressed, and we were told that $383,000 of stimulus money used to pay teachers in fiscal 2012 would be reflected in the state's minimum budget requirement for fiscal 2013. In fact, the MBR in fiscal 2013 decreased $56,000. It would be my pleasure to support budgets sent to referendum in May, if they are scaled back to reflect need and are designed to eliminate most of these surpluses. The Board of Finance, as a matter of routine practice, adds 1.2% of the budgets as a contingency. That should be adequate, and budget surpluses should be otherwise cease to exist. Therefore, please consider reducing year-over-year 2013-14 education budget by $600,000, the town budget by $400,000, while the mill rate comparisons would likely remain adverse. It would be a step in the right direction and would demonstrate good faith to Clinton taxpayers and other stakeholders. If it ignited a growth in the grand list by strengthening property values and attracting commercial development, it could reverse the negative feedback loop that will otherwise drive taxes to the roof, respectfully. Thank you.
Board of Finance meeting for April 8th, 2013 to order. We have a full vote, so we don't need to see anybody. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes from March 11th, 2013.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed?
I abstain.
I'm gonna abstain.
I had no correspondence. Anyone? All right. Item 4, visitor and public comment. Would anybody like to be heard?
Yes, I actually didn't have correspondence. I did send all of you an email over the weekend, which I hope everybody got. Did anybody not get a copy?
I did not get it.
Yeah, so I hope you will weigh that. The other thing I wanted to bring your attention, we just conducted a little survey among some of our people to find out why they didn't attend your meeting, and those that did, why they didn't speak. And I mean, kind of the pattern here, this is somewhat preliminary, is they really didn't think you were listening or would listen. So
I'm sorry, what did you say? I wouldn't.
I hope you will weigh what we sent to you. We put a lot of effort into it. Good, thank you.
Give everybody seat now.
Commissioner Thomas?
No.
Okay, item 5, we can talk about the town budget now. All right, so let's consider finalize the town budget. We're open, the floor is open.
I bring to your attention two things. One is the appropriated surplus item of $250,000, which this Board of Finance did not address, and how it got into the budget. In the first place, is beyond me without a motion to put it in. I'd like to know who did put it in. And the other thing is that in terms of surplus, which I have asked Mr. Curry to give me information on, but he has not given it to me. The charter of the town, under section 10.2, preparation of the budget, item C4, says an estimate of the available cash surplus or deficit at the end of the current fiscal year to be included in the proposed estimate. And C says the proposed budget shall include, but not limited to, the following items, and that's 4. And we haven't addressed that, ever. And in a case that the state decided at Caulfield was the language of that statute, requiring that a general fund surplus in the town budget be applied to reducing the tax rate for the upcoming fiscal year. So, we don't know, and we can only estimate what the surplus is going to be, but we have to have our finance director give us a closer estimate of what it is before we can even consider it. There may be deficits as well. So, Mr. Curry, we have a general idea of whether the town has a surplus?
You have an estimated number on the
I have not
operational
done any
surplus?
estimates on the town. I got your email late Thursday, and I spoke to Brad about it a little bit, and we have never done one, so I haven't had a chance to really work on it since late Thursday.
Why would you talk to Brad about it, not me? I sent you the email.
Well, he's the chair of the Board of Finance. And
I'm
I was
vice chair. I'm vice chairman.
I was asking if the town has ever done one in the past, and I was told no, they have not. Because I was going to look for it and trying to
Well-
update it.
Well, there would be no appropriated surplus ever if the town had never considered a surplus. Because that's the only place we could possibly draw down a surplus. Well,
And the case that you cite, one of the things that you run into with those cases is the local rule statute usually overrules all of those cases.
right, that's why I'm looking at our chart.
It's in our charter.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as the estimate goes, we know what our audited surplus is.
Yeah, but that's for last fiscal year.
Well, that's the most
It's the only accurate one we
up-to-date
have.
number that we have.
It's the only accurate one we have. But that's not what the statute or the charter says. It doesn't reflect us back to last year's audited numbers.
Go figure, ambiguity in the law.
Who knows?
But maybe we're just a year behind, like, I don't think we ever saw how that audited number came into the undesignated number that we've been working with. Is it included in the undesignated number?
The surplus is in the general fund.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
The only way the undesignated surplus is adjusted is your results from operations, which are your revenues over your expenditures,
Or vice versa.
or vice versa, if you have a deficit.
And then as far as the appropriated item, the 250,000, that was done.
Here's the
It was
question.
there when I did the numbers.
I understand you weren't here for 12/13, Mike Snips. You're here now, talking.
Yeah, if you look
about
at the proposed revenue, that was included in the current year budget.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's in there.
It hasn't been taken
What
out.
people are saying is probably we didn't talk about it prior to approving the budget last year of putting it in there, like we had the year before that, and like we are about to do now, discussing it. It probably just got put in there last year without discussion, quite frankly.
So we we used to get, with Kevin, we used to get like the monthly financial report that showed budget versus actual. I haven't been getting those.
No, I haven't either.
Okay.
I was
so
gonna mention
So it
that.
does seem to me that by virtue of those, we should be able to eyeball, you know, some of that and kind of by this point in time, see what a particular. Well, or on a basis of budget versus actual, sometimes you look like you have a surplus, but it really has to be on the basis of revenues versus expenses, which is what we're saying. So we don't get revenues, and maybe we should get that.
Well, we get updates.
We get updates and expenditures, but it's kind of tough to keep monthly jogging our old ledger.
Usually if they're not close, we get told.
Right. Well, so that's the thing, it does seem like the 250, to me, you know, was a placeholder for, you know, the audited statements, and I think what you said at the public hearing, which was, that's even a risky number, no matter what's in there, is, you know, because the opposite could happen.
We discussed it last year because the East Haven appropriated surplus came up. We were given an article and a memorandum about it.
I don't know.
Again-
You're probably right, but I just don't know.
Again, let's discuss what we're gonna do this year.
Well, I'm confused.
So we wanna leave it, are we going to put the $250,000, or let's say it this way, leave the placeholder in the 250 of revenues, or are we going to take it out? If we take it out, that adds to your taxpayer, to your mill rate. Because you will then have to, you'll have to decrease your revenue side, and
We're
That would be,
artificially creating $250,000 in
I know, I agree,
revenue.
so I'm actually a little confused why you agree with taking it out when I think you were pointing to the part in the charter that says we're allowed to consider surpluses.
I am.
And we're sort of, you know, that's, to me, it sounds like historically, that's sort of the way the board considered the surplus.
No, but I don't think Doug's inconsistent. I think we should consider it, but the answer should always be, agree?
I'm perfectly willing.
I can't vote, so I'm just bringing these to the floor. Now, but you can deal with surplus just by saying, we know that the Board of Education is coming in with some kind of a surplus.
We all seem to
because
be confident in that, though, at the last meeting.
There's a confidence level in that. There seems to be anyhow.
That's only an expenditure side.
So we don't have a revenue side. Is that what you're
That
saying?
doesn't have revenue, the town.
Well,
does.
the town, right. But the indication is that there's somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000 of surplus, right?
I think it was 866 in my one.
It was 865, it was in that range. The,
And then we did, the last estimate I presented to the Board of Education included CIP, capital improvements, so that brought it down a couple $100,000.
right.
It's not spent. in-
Well, but I would agree, it's the same way that we don't technically return money to the taxpayers, but there is a taxpayer benefit to the process that we are doing.
If you lower his mill rate, you're benefiting the taxpayer. If you increase his mill rate, you're not benefiting the taxpayer.
And I was actually gonna say too, which is why I sort of feel comfortable with the 250, because, so, you know, we backed out 200 out of 665, if we have an appropriated surplus of 250 in there, you know, we're at 350, and that could be, you know, maybe it comes in and maybe it doesn't, but I think it's a good due diligence for the fact that we do consider a surplus when we create the budget.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things was to spend $500,000 of the surplus to buy the capital improvements. Instead of appropriating it in the budget to spend, I don't know what the number was, it was like $540,000 or something like that.
what's that?
The call that the Board of Selectmen gave the CBC.
Yeah, it was roughly about $560,000 that he was going to try to buy out of undesignated surplus until we found out undesignated got
Really
sort of
close to
chopped up
10%.
real good because of the,
Storms.
yeah, all the storms and the WPCC allocation of
And
$414,000. Let's not forget that one.
160 for the environment.
Was it? Heart and hypertension.
Heart and hypertension.
New accounting system.
Yeah, it was, well,
Well,
that
the new
was,
accounting system was paid from
that
last
was-
year's surplus.
no. The finance software accounting system $300,000 was allocated this year after July 1st.
After July
It
1st.
came off the top of that,
Of the 7.
there you go. But
So if we were to do away with the appropriated surplus line item, how else could we address the surplus for the benefit of the taxpayer?
And the problem is, I mean, someday maybe we'll get to a point where we don't have to raise the mill rate at all to start with, and then maybe we can start reducing that number that we do hold as a placeholder.
You may not have
Cut
to
it to
reduce it,
200,
you may
cut it to
spend it.
150, start gradually chipping away so it goes down to 0. But to take it all out in 1 year like this year, I think is a little bit too drastic.
It's a big hit.
So
It's like 1/10 of
it's
it.
about, what, 1/10?
A little over 1/10 of a mil.
Okay.
I mean, it's not gonna be any kind of drastic change.
Easy.
One way or the other.
Anything that goes up in this,
Go ahead, finish the thought. Anything that goes up
no,
is-
it goes up,
it's
I
evil. It's
think
anathema.
it's a
It's
negative
not-
thing.
Well, it is negative.
It ultimately is gonna happen that if we continue to arbitrate the revenue side with our surplus, to make it look like we're not spending as much as we are, when that runs out, the tax rate's gonna go up and everyone's gonna be yelling and screaming. And you can't replace, don't use your savings account to buy food. And that's what you're doing here.
So if this is kind of, if this board agrees on that, can you, like amortize it to 0? Or like, let's say over the next 3 years?
There's only one thing to do, is you gotta get rid of it somehow, or at least cut it in half, or that's all you have to do.
Right.
Don't take as much out of the surplus as we've been unknowingly doing.
Okay, I'll go
That's
for
what I
that.
would
Well,
do.
with all due respect, I've known we've been doing it every year. I mean, it comes up and we talk about it. We do talk about it once a year. I mean, there's a large movement or loud movement that they want us to appropriate surplus to revenue to provide tax relief. And I heard it from 2 speakers at the public hearing.
We heard it up to $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, the choices are, leave it as is, reduce it by some amount incrementally, or reduce it completely.
Right.
And
We
our-
had $7.5 million in surplus.
And our surplus did continue to grow.
Maybe more than that. This is a
It's not
different
growing
era.
now. We're not growing now.
You know, so, I mean, that brings up the other question of the contingency fund that we have. You know, right now, it's at $150,000.
90.
No, I know,
No, well, we-
the appropriation
Oh, the
request, sorry.
Right. We used to start off at 200.
200
How is the contingency fund supposed to be used?
for an emergency. Something that wasn't foreseen in the operating budget, and the department head comes to us and says, hey, I didn't realize that the transmission was gonna drop off one of my heavy trucks, and I need $40,000. Okay, that's what we have a contingency fund for. But we've gotten into this cycle where we have departments coming back and asking for appropriations when they should be appropriately budgeting for the year for everything that they need.
Or being put in CEC and going through that system.
But we cut CPC.
This year we gave a donation to the celebration too, for $14,500.
They add up, 14 here, 20 here, 7 here.
$8,000 for a police vehicle, $10,000 for the assessor property audits, which we have talked about, whether or not we should just put that in our operating
We
budget.
have talked about that. And she
We talked
refused
about it.
She refused it.
And she refused it.
Right. So these are not emergency expenses.
No,
These should be budgeted.
they should be budgeted.
Exactly.
And they're not. Directing towards Lori, right. Contingency is something that, I was surprised, but we use a designated as if it was a
Right.
savings account.
Not a designated.
The
I mean,
difference, we
contingency.
we dip in constantly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would be in support of taking the 250 out completely. You know, but I mean, if you want to do it incrementally, you know, make the motion.
Well, let's,
What?
And would you suggest getting rid of the contingency fund
I
also?
was gonna add that, why don't we just do both? Well, I'm
You're
trying
gonna
to
get rid of
prevent somebody from
contingency
coming in and asking for money.
What's
What
What's
would
the
we
difference
do
in
with
emergency?
contingency that we don't do
We
with
have no
undesignated?
designated surplus.
I just read a whole bunch of stuff off to you, Mr. Chairman, that what we do with contingency. I mean, if the police department comes in and says they hire a police officer all of a sudden and they need money for uniforms or recruitment or sending them off to the academy, we gave them money. I mean, let me go back to the years prior to, let me just read some of the things that you've done out of contingency.
It's just
You've done website updates, 6180, that was a couple
But
years
that's
ago.
not an emergency, that's sloppy.
I
planning.
understand that, but those things will come up during the course of the year,
Then
26,000.
we'll take them out undesignated.
Yeah, that's the way you have
Well,
to do it.
okay, if you didn't have a contingency
Provided
this
we don't
year.
go below 10%.
Oh, okay, right now in
So then you have
contingency,
to say no.
right now in
exactly.
undesignated, you've got $64,347 to spend.
As Mr. Sullivan says, if that happens.
So something
we go
comes in above that,
we
what do
say
we
no.
do? We say no, okay.
Okay?
So if another storm hits here tomorrow,
That's an emergency, that's a different act, that's a different animal.
You know,
I
the problem
mean-
is that we're real close to that floor, and look, Dennis, I understand what you're saying, you know, you leave the contingency there, and it feels like a warm blanket, you know, I mean, but it's, essentially, you know, we need to, it's clear that we have to pay attention. I mean, we're real close to the policy limit of 10%, we've got a major debt service that's gonna be coming up in the next couple of years, we have to start building
There's
up
new
that
schools.
surplus. Yeah.
We have water pollution control, we're talking multi-millions there. And it's on the way. So
But
I
I
mean,
also think the contingency could be viewed as more of a constraint, like if you do look in the opposite direction, if all of a sudden we do get $1 million influx, then, you know, just from our own mindset, we think we have $1 million to spend, versus maybe if we just change the mindset of, that because of the debt service coming up, because of water pollution, we never touch undesignated, but we do have contingency of $150,000 and that's it. You know, like, because otherwise, like, it's like cash in your pocket, right? If you have 150 or if you have $1 million, the million kind of feels better. If the tide next year swung the other way, that all of a sudden undesignated is $2 million more than our floor. You know, now we're just in a swash of.
it's gonna make a lot of bond buyers very happy if that occurs.
And I'd love to know where it's coming from.
Yeah, and I'd love to know where that 2 million is coming from.
What
I don't think I'm panicking.
what brings the
Well, I'm not
panic so much today about, well, we gotta get that 250 out of that, we gotta get that placeholder out of there real quick, we gotta cut
Because
contingency,
these are
all this stuff.
legitimate questions that the Board of Finance has to address. The 250 just can't appear miraculously on the budget.
I understand it.
And we have surpluses, or we don't have surpluses, but our charter requires us to address the issue. We
I
haven't
understand
done
that.
so
I understand
in
that
this
very
kind
well.
of forum.
We've had
And that's
surpluses
not
for the
panicking.
last 6 years.
Yes,
Almost $1
and
million
still-
a
and
year
still
between
and
both.
yet- And still and yet, we're right on the cusp of our 10% policy and probably may go below.
You won't. And you know that because the man right there is telling you, you're gonna get 75% of that money that we just handed out here. $1 million for Sandy, I'll almost say it's back.
I mean,
I said my piece, that's all.
investors buy a bond, they're guaranteed a certain rate of return based on certain covenants that you make them. And say, these are the projects we're gonna do with your money.
Okay, well, if they come in,
But we have no project, we have no state approval for anything to be done.
And we also don't know what kind of program we're gonna have as far as financing goes, there's gonna be options.
Right.
So we just don't know.
We don't know. We're not there yet.
It never hurts to start planning, because we do know there's a large cost coming up. The problem is,
But that's what
you gotta get the money from
CCC
somewhere,
is.
and people are already screaming like they're paying too much taxes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the
And
source of
believe
that
me.
is additional taxes.
but I mean, we just
Extend
keep
it to
going
the
around
future.
in circles, but okay,
Yeah,
let's
you're not
get
putting out
back.
circles, because, you know, the thing is, it's a difference without a distinction, the way we use contingency and undesignated. We don't use contingency fund as if it's a real contingency fund.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion just to get things really going, really nice, because I like some of Valerie's ideas now. So I'll do a balancing of the budget here. I will make a motion to reduce the contingency fund by $50,000 and also reduce the placeholder in that
Appropriated
appropriated surplus from by $50,000. reducing it from 50 down to 200,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
You're advertising.
We're just slowly reducing.
I'm gonna try to slowly reduce, at the same time, not put a burden on the
I think
taxpayer.
it makes sense.
All right, any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
Well, that is unfortunately what you try to put out every year is always ignored, and that is, we have a 5-year plan, guys, how come we change it every year?
At 2.1 million, we're appropriating
That's true.
745,000 per town.
Doesn't work.
We don't.
It's huge
Because
change.
people aren't keeping, they're not disciplined enough.
Someone
Told me.
tell me where,
It's our job.
All right, any other items on the town side? Any other departments? Anybody want to comment about the public hearing and
Public
changes
hearing
they want to make?
They didn't have anything to say about it. Right?
So we don't need another motion or another budget motion, so, and we're not interested in having another public hearing, so we're done with the town budget. Everyone okay with that? We can move on to education? All right, let's move on to education budget. Who wants to be heard on the education budget?
Well, the reaction that I heard from the public hearing was that there were 2 individuals that wanted us to take a surplus and apply it to the expenses going forward. I think we've discussed that pretty much
Kicked it in
ad
the teeth.
nauseum. We've kicked it around a lot on the town side. I don't know if there's a difference on the education side or not. A surplus is a surplus is a surplus, comes back to the town, and that's it.
So are there any proposed reductions or additions to the Board of Education budget? So we'll take a motion to send the Board of Education budget as proposed to the budget meeting.
So second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you.
Okay, visitors, anybody, anything?
Is the budget, which of course is now going to go to referendum on the 8th. And just to point out that the budget, the legal notice, I don't know if you just pass this around. Pass it there. The legal notice includes a column for the current year's expected expenditures. And we've learned from Robert Curry, for example, and I'll pass these around as well, that the certified line and the employee benefits line are going to have big surpluses in them. And they're not reflecting that in this legal budget. Likewise, Mr. Curry could not provide a similar sheet for the town of Clinton, which I also FOIA requesting. I gather we haven't done a updated, where are we on our budget? I can say that in all my years of budgeting, I never did a budget anytime that I didn't know where I was in the current year. And it's a little bit like a doctor prescribing medicine and not taking someone's temperature. It's malpractice. So I think that in the future, we need to know where we are in the current year's
We
budget.
know where we are. I can go on my computer anytime and pull out this year's expenditures for the town side, and I know where we are in relation to what was approved and
Is there
appropriated.
some reason that Mr. Curry can't?
I don't know. I know that he was
asked for this and he didn't provide.
he was comparing numbers. I know he was comparing these numbers with the actual audited numbers to make sure that they were correct.
But clearly the information on the legal notice is not accurate.
Because when I go through, I'll tell you right now, I go through when we do our budgets in December, we start putting them together November, December, I go through year to date where we are on line items to see why, if there's a request for more money or if there's a request for the same amount of money and less than 50% has been spent. And Carol, you've asked those questions too. We know where we are at that point.
Is there some reason Mr. Curry couldn't have supplied a report like this to the Board
You
of
just said
Finance?
that was for the town side.
Yeah, I
He's
don't.
asking about the education.
Board of
Well, I'm asking
Education
about
budget has that in there too, year-to-date expenses when we get that budget book.
But the information on the legal notice is clearly not accurate. And
Well, this does show a surplus in the health insurance, in the certified staff of $100,000.
$300,000, $371,000.
Yeah, no, so it's,
That, the
Estimated
original,
expenses versus original is $60,000.
one of those columns is what was done by Kevin Kane in
Right.
November, and the other one, the second column, is what was done by Robert Curry in February, and he's projecting a surplus of $371,000.
So these are his projections through the end of the fiscal year.
Yes, and then-
This is how it looks to him at,
And what I'm saying is that-
February 21st.
That's correct, and what I'm saying, that is not reflected in the legal notice. The legal notice says that this year's expenditure will equal last year's budget, and it's not correct, it's inaccurate. And putting that out to the public is
Well,
misleading.
because it's estimated. First of all, you can't, it's estimated, you can't put down unless you have a certified audit. You can't project, I'm telling you, that's the truth. The auditors will come go crazy on us if we could just start estimating. We know what we're gonna have for surplus.
What is the column, what is the column on the budget?
I don't know why they have an estimated expenses column.
Well, they do, and
They
it's
should.
and it's misleading.
No, it shouldn't be there, because until you have the audit done after the end of June, you don't know what your actual expenditures are.
I mean,
You
the
can
other,
estimate, but
the other thing is
It does
that,
seem like a waste because the figures
it's just the
for the
same
Board of
number.
Education run straight down in compliance with the original
right,
expenses.
there are about
so-
3 lines there that vary from the budget. and
What does the
that's about it.
charter require for the publication?
It's just a dollar amount. Actually, we don't have to get to this extent, you could go by department, just have a line item for fire department, total requested appropriation, and that's all you have to have for
The
the
answer
charter.
to Kurt, I mean, I provide to the Public Works Commission my year-to-date every month. I go right to the computer now and print it out, so, I mean, that information in the department head, we look at it all the time. But the budget that's why it's called estimated. I mean, you can't, if you put a surplus in there and something happens, you don't have a surplus, then people are gonna be just as mad, because you say, well, what happened to the surplus? So,
Plus, we look at the year-to-date, we review the budget
yeah,
halfway through the
I don't
fiscal
know how
year.
you do that. And be accurate.
All I'm saying is that the legal notice is clearly not.
Well, that's why it says estimated, and that's what makes it the legal notice. It doesn't say actual.
If you put an estimated expense showing a surplus, and then there is no surplus at the end of the year, it would be
Correct.
equally as.
I guess the thing is if it's just gonna be what the budget was last
Why
year.
have it?
Why have it?
Why have it?
But it comes to,
I agree.
it strikes me in this
That
form
makes sense.
to be misleading.
Take it out.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line, why have it?
I would like to have it, and I would like to have numbers like Mr. Curry has provided
Yeah,
in
I'd
it.
like to have
That to me would be
authentic
useful,
numbers.
and it would be something that'd be insightful for voters to have in front of them. And it is an estimate, but it ought to be a current estimate. It shouldn't be what last year's budget was, otherwise it's useless.
Right, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, we gotta agree.
I agree.
We agree.
And we've got that on film.
I'll tell you.
Get that in the harbor.
Tom Oliver,
It's just
Kirk, Tom
remains-
Oliver, members of the Board of Finance have been asking for years to change the way this is done. Just put, police department, X amount of dollars, and if somebody requests a breakdown of it, then they provide the breakdown of the line items.
Right, I think what you got there is great except for that one column.
Right.
I think more detail is better than less detail, but it needs to be
I
accurate.
agree.
He was working on that yesterday with the stuff for the town side, what you had asked for I was down there, and he was trying to figure out where we were tracking.
It doesn't even concern me as much the town side, because, I mean, there's a lot of oversight on many individuals' parts on the town side. Board of Education, we just get that big number and very little, breakdown. And, so I think the public would like more information as to how the education system is going, since all we hear is about declining enrollment. The other night, a big portion of the discussion that David Fink gave us was about how it's projected that the enrollment in public schools in Connecticut in general will go down 26% in the upcoming years. So why are these education budgets choking us all to death? I forget what his time frame was, but it was 26 years, and that's why they're looking at housing as being more centralized downtown, and why we are such an advantage with the train station right there, because that's ideal for an older population who still wants mobility. But everything you hear is about how there are fewer and fewer children in schools in Connecticut, so I just think education in general needs a tight, close look from year to year. and that just automatic increases should not be automatic.
Okay. All right, anybody else?